on the Doomer Optimism podcast, you spoke with
Mm.
Ashley and Jason about not necessarily having, one humongous tent of like-minded individuals, but possibly a constellation of different interests and wormholing from one of them to another. So I thought that was super interesting, super generative. And I guess, can you just talk a little bit more about some of those things? Because we talked a little bit about boundaries, and they're not, you can't just throw all boundaries to the wayside, but are like thresholds useful to call out, or really just kind of distractions from momentum? And how do you really kind of create some of those kind of wormholes between like-minded groups? Is it narratives? Is it organization? Any thoughts on that you can kind of expand on?
Sure. I guess there's maybe two ways that I would approach that. One is wormholes between different echo chambers or between different tribes. I mean, that's where mimetic mediation comes in, and that's not my term. That's a term that I think Jason developed together with Peter Limberg, who's the steward of the
Yeah,
Stoa.
the Stoa.
And the Stoa is amazing, and I highly recommend checking out the Stoa.
For
But
sure.
the concept of mimetic mediation is it's mediating between different mimetic tribes, let's
Yep.
say. And you can even just think about your own Thanksgiving dinner table. So at Thanksgiving, you're
Contentious
probably at
area.
the intersection. Exactly. You're probably at the intersection of at least two mimetic tribes, if not more, which is why people don't talk about politics,
Yeah.
right? Because you got different tribes in the room.
Yeah.
And so, but if we're going to kind of, address polarization, or we got to do some mimetic mediation, right? Start at your Thanksgiving dinner table. Those are the tribes that you're connected to, at least,
Mm-hmm.
and there's some love there. There's probably some love between family members, and that's a real that's not real to work with, love. So that, I mean, that's, I'm still speaking kind of in the abstract, like what would that even look like? Maybe I'll just make it a tiny bit more like, if we take an issue like abortion, which how would you do mimetic mediation between tribes on abortion? Well, it turns out that 62% of Americans, I think is the statistic I just read, 62% of Americans want sensible abortion rights. The majority of us.
Yep.
And so, but like, we're not going to, we're going to get legislation. We're getting legislation at the extremes. And the media narratives are also kind of pushed to the extremes because of social media and the economic and political context in which it exists, blah, 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 blah. Insert the conversation we've already had. But how might we articulate the actual moral majority opinion on abortion that actually the majority of us share, right? That would require some mimetic mediation, let's say, or we could just call it integration of the steelman versions of the different perspectives. Some things cannot be integrated, right? Abortion under no circumstances cannot be integrated, but like no abortion under circumstances of when it's like already, X weeks, when it's already viable, and the woman's life is not threatened by the birth. Like, so there are ways to integrate this, like the steel man, let's say, that's mimetic mediation, I guess, in terms of um uh the integrating the different perspectives. I'm trying to remember what my second like approach was to your question. The different tense. Okay,
Oh
so that,
yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
I guess one is one approach might be, or one way to think about it might be how to, right, actually integrate the different perspectives.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like on a version. Another way to think about it, this is what I talked about with Jason and Ashley, is in terms of developing a strategy.
That was
If
my
you're going
next
to
thing. So
develop a
go
strategy,
in
yeah,
synthetic strategy. Go
yeah,
riff.
synthetic strategy. So, and
Do
I
it.
don't know, this is too nerdy for people, but
No, not at all.
um, yeah, the idea, it's very simple. The idea is, and the idea if you're trying to come up with a way of doing something, a strategy for something like leadership, or I mean, leadership was the example I started with them.
Yep.
And I can just give that example. And this is not from my work. This is from Daniel Goleman. But
Mm-hmm.
he does this really brilliant thing where instead of being like, this is the definition of a good leader does this always and all the time, he asks, what he did was he interviewed many business leaders, and he identified 6 different leadership styles that all work well in different circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you don't, it's like commanding works really well in a crisis. Affiliative works really well when you need to repair bonds. Visionary works really well when you need to mobilize some kind of a turnaround and, cohere around a new shared vision. So he has these different, but it's not just that. So that's already brilliant in and of itself. It's like, oh, wow, leadership looks different in different leadership is not the same thing all the time. It depends what circumstance are we in, what do we need, and therefore what kind of leadership do we need. But he takes the further brilliant step of what is that leadership style's impact on the overall organizational climate. Commanding sucks. It's no fun to be commanded. We don't like it. Visionary is really fun. We love that one. And so we use the ones that are not fun in order to get ourselves out of that situation so we can shift into the ones that feel better for everyone. Some are like emergency measures. So when you're thinking about something like growing food, it just helps right size. It's like, oh, I mean, this is from the conversation with Ashley and Jason, and I don't know enough about this, but let's just use this as an example. Oh, fake meat is kind of an emergency measure, right? It's like, maybe, I mean, this is the way that they, and again, I don't know but let's just use this as an illustration. It's like that also helps us kind of think about where we want to put our resources. Like we want to put enough resources in the emergency measures so that we have them, but triage wise, we really want to invest in the ones that we want to use most of the time, because that's actually the circumstance we would rather be in. It's just a way
100%.
and then I think actually web or crypto is such like a perfect kind of application for this, because there's so much kind of like it's right, it's wrong, it's good, it's bad. It's like under what circumstances.
Yep.
If we just abstract from crypto and just think in terms of currency or methods of exchange, there's so many tools we get to put on the table. We get to put fiat money, we get to put bartering, we get to put local currencies, we get to put time banks, we get to put crypto, we get to put like, I don't even know all of them. And then you can imagine a similar matrix to the one for leadership. Under what circumstances, if any, is this method of exchange or storing value most useful? And then we can start to develop as I would call it, synthetic strategy that integrates, right, and right sizes the different tools. And with crypto, I guess it's also worth saying we don't totally know yet. Like we're kind of still in a little bit of experimentation mode. So there's also a little bit of like, hold up the criticism. Let's try it out and see where it's useful. We don't totally know the answer to that question yet, so that we can incorporate it into the toolbox as it is useful.
That's great. Well put, because I mean, honestly, you could kind of take that strategy, if you will, of, looking at things synthetically with almost any emerging technology, anything that's kind of coming up.